Mira, if Joser is not like people waiting.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. And here we are having this Let's Talk Western Ghats. This is the first of the series. The idea is to have, a joint one for Karnataka, Kerala, and Goa, and the different states in the Western Ghats, and then take it up like a more of a regional specific one in the following weeks. So this is the first of it, and we are happy to have our panelists on board. And what we intend to do is to have this as a more of a conversational one, and you will see that the panelists will speak for some time, and towards the end we would really want the participants to be participating in this, affected parties to share their experiences and all that. So ideally, land use and land cover, LULC changes has induced by the human and natural processes drive several earth influencing, and the climate overall at the global level has also been changing. And we are seeing that through several of these disasters in 2018 and 2019. And this whole conversation is about understanding what happened after the disasters, what happened while having the disasters, and how are the people living in these disaster prone areas coping up with these kind of changes. So I'll first introduce Mr. Viju B, who is a journalist from Kerala, and he's with the Times of India. He's the author of the award-winning book Flood and Fury, and has the experience of traveling along the Western Ghats from down south in Kerala to Sindhudurg in Maharashtra in the aftermath of landslides of 2018 in Kerala. So over to you, Viju. So you have about 10 minutes, and we will prompt you after 10 minutes. Thank you. Viju?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Viju, yes. Over to you, Viju.
So finally, after the glitches and hitches, we are back. Yeah. Anyway, good evening to you all. I'm glad to be part of this very important session, very important discussion on Western Ghats and the recurring landslides and floods that are occurring in the recent years. I'm happy that Claude Alvares is also part of this discussion. Claude, as all of you know, his phenomenal work serves as a model for all of us. And he's perhaps the only reason why Western Ghats and Goa has been rescued from miners today. So I'm very happy that Claude is also there as part of this discussion. So what I'll do now is I'll take you through a small journey vis-a-vis my book, The Flood and Fury. And the reason for writing the book, because it's so close to the topic that we are discussing today. So 4 years back, Kerala had these floods. As all of you know, 480 people lost their lives, and around 30,000 crore worth of property were damaged. They went under water. I mean, it was a kind of disaster that Kerala would have never expected. People in Kerala would have never expected, but it happened. So as part of reporting for the Times of India, I traveled to these flood-ravaged areas, in some of these flood-ravaged areas. So meanwhile, a very interesting thing was happening in Kerala. As you know, Keralites love to debate a lot. So on public forums, there was this whole debate, this whole thing about why these floods were occurring, why did the floods and landslides occur in Kerala. So we were given two interesting arguments, interesting contention. One by the government. The government in the first place said that the floods and landslides in Kerala was a once in a 100-year phenomenon, but that was not the case. In 2019, we had landslides in Puthumala and Wayanad, and in Kavalapara and Malappuram. In 2020, we had landslides in Pettimudi, Munnar. In 2021, we had again landslides in Kottayam district. So we had a series of landslides in the last 3 years. So this whole contention that this is a once in a 100-year phenomenon was completely demolished. And of course, The next contention had some facts. They said the floods and landslides because of incessant rains. During 2018, between August 16th and August 14th, between August 14th and August 16th, we had around 900 millimeters of rainfall in the Western Ghats region. And obviously, rainfall, incessant rainfall, unprecedented rainfall is one of the reasons for the floods to occur. That was one reason given by the government. Now, the opposition party, the opposition, the Congress, the UDF government, they came up with a contention that no, the floods primarily happened because of the delay in opening of shutters of the dam. Now in Kerala, we have around 58 dams, and many of these dams, as you know, are used for generating power. Now, as you know, we store a lot of water so that in summer we can generate power. So there was a delay in opening of shutters of the dam. So these were the two reasons given. These were the two reasons that were in the public domain when I started investigating the reasons for the floods to occur in the Western Ghats region. So my investigation, I went to 6 worst affected areas in the Western Ghats region in Kerala, and after that I traveled to Karnataka and I traveled to Goa where I met Claude. I don't know whether he remembers me. I went and I met him at his house, and he also gave me a lot of inputs. I spoke to a lot of people. I spoke to NGOs. I spoke to activists. I spoke to the tribal community. I spoke to ecologists, and that is how I wrote the book. And my conclusion, my fundamental premise of this book is the floods and landslides occurred in the Western Ghats region precisely because of the ecological devastation that has occurred in the Western Ghats region. Now, I'll give you a small brief of what is Western Ghats ecosystem. The Western Ghats ecosystem, as you know, is one of the oldest ecosystem in the country. It's much older than Himalayas. In fact, it's 150 million years old. And you have such a rich biodiverse region. You have 4,000 species of flowering plants, hundreds of species of mammals. I would say it's as good as an Amazon forest, as good as our Amazon forest. But today, and you look at the rivers. We have 58 rivers flowing down from the Western Ghats. I mean, all your big cities, be it Trivandrum, be it Kochi, be it Panjim, be it Bombay, be it Bangalore, be it Chennai, all your big cities get drinking water supply from the 58 rivers that flows down from Western Ghats region. I would say that if Western Ghats was not there, 1/4 of the population of this country would have died of starvation and thirst. Imagine, that's the ecological significance that Western Ghats today is. But today, unfortunately, what is the state of Western Ghats? The Indian Institute of Science came out with an earth-shattering report which said that 35% of the Western Ghats region in the last 9 years has been completely destroyed. 35% would be around 38,000 square kilometers. As big as the state of Kerala has been completely destroyed in the last 90 years, the last century. So that's the state of Western Ghats. So that is an overview we should have when we talk about Western Ghats. Now I'll give you 2 specific examples since I don't have much time. I'll talk about 2 rivers. I've written about a lot of rivers in my book. I'll talk about 2 rivers in Kerala. One is the Cherutoni River, because if you look at where did the floods occur in the river banks on the river banks, isn't it? So I'll speak about Cherutoni River. The Cherutoni River is in Idukki district. Now the Cherutoni River was completely dammed to construct the Idukki and the Cherutoni dam way back in 1975. So the Cherutoni River is completely non-existent today. So in 2018, on August 16th, both the reservoirs of Idukki and Cherutoni was completely filled, and they had to open the shutters, or it was a momentous movement. Cherutoni, or the lifting of shutters of Cherutoni of the Cherutoni dam was a momentous movement, and it was happening after 26 years. People were celebrating. But what happened was that was the beginning of the floods in Kerala. I don't know how many of you remember that famous sequence where a person was running with a child over the Chapar Bridge, and the water was just flowing into the Cherutoni town. And the entire Cherutoni township was completely marooned because you didn't have Cherutoni River. On the river bed, you had townships coming up. You had shopping complexes coming up. You had farms coming up. So the river actually regained its path. So this is a typical example of bad, complete river mismanagement. I'll talk about another river called Pamba River. The Pamba River is the third longest river in Kerala. It starts from Idukki and flows through 3 districts of Kerala and ends in the Vembanad Lake. Now, Pamba River has been completely reclaimed. If you look at the Pamba River, the portion of Pamba River near to the Sabrimala temple, it's completely reclaimed, and that was one of the reasons for the floods to happen in Pamba River. In fact, I've been to the Pamba River. The Pamba River today flows like a black drain. I mean, you can't step into the Pamba River. It's so bad. It's so bad. And the Supreme Court Empowered Committee post 2018 floods, they went to the Pamba River and to Sabrimala, and they said that Sabrimala temple has turned into a complete jungle. I mean, there is two examples that are citing. One is about this Pamba River, and one is about this Cherudhoni River, where because of massive encroachment on both sides of the river banks, that we had floods. Now, coming to the question of landslides, there's this very interesting study done by Hume Center of Ecology in Wayanad. There is a place called Y3 in Wayanad. Now, Y3 suffered major landslides in 2018 floods. So, 2 researchers who heads the Hume Center, Suma and Vishnu, they went and mapped the Y3 area. And what they found out was shocking. Every landslips and landslide that happened in Y3 was due to unscientific construction, because of chopping of hills, because of monocrop cultivation. In every landslide and landslide have examples of about Coorg. In Coorg also similar situation. I mean, the GSI report specifically speaks about that. So where is our developmental model? I mean, what is the developmental model that we need to have post 2018 floods? Kerala, unfortunately, still does not have a developmental model. In fact, in Kerala, nobody talks about Western Ghats. That's a sad part. Nobody talks about Western Ghats and what is happening in the Western Ghat region. No, and post 2018 floods, we should have had a landslide audit. We should have had local forecasting stations. We should have had a dam management. We should have had a reservoir management. We should have at least, I'm saying, we should have at least adopted one river. We have 48 rivers. Let's adopt one river and show that, okay, we have conserved one river. That's not happening. So it's a very frightening scenario. And this year too, I'm expecting similar kinds of landslides and similar kinds of disasters to happen. Things are not looking grim. Urgently, we need to have a new developmental model, very sustainable developmental model, which looks into all these concerns. That's the only option left. Otherwise, we are going to get into a major disaster. Yeah, I think I've crossed the time limit, isn't it?
You have 2 more minutes, Viju, if you want to just take 2 more minutes.
So I think we need to talk about, the first thing that we need to talk about, like people like Claude, and we need to, we had a Western Ghat, we had a Madhav Gadgil report, isn't it? The WGB report. Where is the report? It's complete. It's been completely, I mean, forget Madhav Gadgil report. There is no, I mean, in Kerala, what's happening right now is we have in Kerala, we have around 6,000 quarries. Imagine 6,000 quarries. So on average, we have 6 quarries in every panchayat. And more so now, the government has come out with this order where you have quarries from 50 meters from residential areas. I mean, quarries, it's not only about landslides. Quarries actually destroy the substreams in the buffer zones of the forest, isn't it? Quarries actually destroy rivers. I mean, you have not done a study on that particular, on that. How many substreams and how many rivers have been destroyed in Kerala because of quarrying? There's no such study being done. Isn't it very sad? Yeah, I think I've crossed time.
Thank you, Viju. Thank you for touching some of the most important points as far as Kerala is concerned. And I think as far as Kerala is concerned, this is probably the origin, or rather, all the landslides started in the Idukki and the Wayanad districts. So thanks for that conversation. So over to Dr. Claude, and I will, most people know Dr. Claude, but then I will just introduce him. Dr. Claude Alvares is the founder of Goa Foundation and is also one of the frontrunners of the Save Western Ghats movement in the 80s. He has 3 decades of experience fighting legal battles against various issues related to Goa and Western Ghats, including illegal mining by companies like Sesak Goa, or the famous or the infamous Vedanta. Several of the Goa Foundation cases have brought out landmark judgments that have a bearing on the future of environmental conservation in India. And we look up to you, Claude. And over to you, Claude, for a 10-minute conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Meera. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Loud and clear. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. I enjoyed. Actually, enjoyed is the wrong word to when I had to listen to what Viju said about the coverage of his experiences in his book. It's sometimes you begin to wonder. We've all gone through science, education, higher education, PhDs, and whatever, but none of it is anyway useful to what is happening right now, because we are really akin to now bulls in China shops, and we are doing things which even a ordinary person who doesn't have any education is would say, what the hell is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? Why are you stripping large areas to put up economic activity? Why are you not respecting the contribution of ecology to the economy? And why don't you open your eyes? Now, when we look at it, we find that most people are not willing to open their eyes. As Viju said again, people in Kerala are not willing to open their eyes anymore about the Western Ghats. They have shut their eyes after they got these apprehensions about the Gadgil report and then the Kasturi Rangan report. They have decided that they don't want anybody else to interfere with all this, and they will want to continue. But factually, as I said, the Indian Institute of Science report, again, Viju has referred to, basically says that 1/3 the area of Western, this 35% or something, the size of Kerala in the Western Ghats has already been decimated, and the ecosystems are in very serious decline. And one of the main causes of this, of course, is the per se destructive projects like mining. Mining is not an enabling or rehabilitative activity in any way. It's not a positive activity in any way. It's a negative activity. So it has to be done in a very highly controlled fashion. But you don't need to, compare mining with ecology, because the two are incompatible. If you have mining, you don't have ecology, you don't have biodiversity, and you don't have 100 different things, including water. Everything goes out of gear, and we have seen it in an appalling way in the middle belt of Goa, where very close to many of the, of course, leases were in the Western Ghat area. They fell even in the wildlife sanctuaries, which are part of the Western Ghat area. And we have seen total devastation. There is nothing that mining leaves for you, as a sort of a, if you construct a house, at least you have a house in which you can live for, 50, 60 years or whatever it is. But if you do mining, you only have a barren landscape, and the miner doesn't want to improve the landscape, because his profit is when he's taking out the ore and not when he's rehabilitating the mine, because that doesn't give him any money at all. That's only spending. And every miner who does that is more interested in removing rather than putting back. So he's not going to think that putting back has to be done after he has removed. So once you have removed all the ore after 20, 25 years, then you don't want to spend any money afterwards in repairing this. So one of the good things that happened with Madhav Gadgil and with Kasturi Rangan was that mining in any case was completely banned henceforth in the Western Ghats. Apart from the quarries which are there in particularly in Kerala, as you mentioned, 6,000 to 7,000 of them, which are also, in many of the ESAs of Kerala, these quarries are there. We have raised it in a petition that we have filed in the Supreme Court, where the Kerala government has usually come, the first government to come and oppose the petition that we have filed in the apex court. So now you will ask, how are these things happening? Who are making these policies, and who is trying to ensure that some of these policies are effective? If you take, for example, the protection regime of the Western Ghats, they are largely in the form of wildlife sanctuaries, that is protected areas, forest areas. And numerous studies from Gadgil to Kasturirangan and to that famous direction which was issued in 2013, which enumerated more than 3,000 villages across the Western Ghats as ESAs. And in those ESAs, you couldn't do anything. You could continue what you were doing, but certainly you couldn't do mining. You couldn't, put up any big projects. You could put up, surprisingly, constructions up to 20,000, square meters that you permitted, but beyond that, you would not be permitted, and so on. It was a very restrictive sort of notification. Gadgil's scope was very vast. Kasturirangan's scope was considerably narrow, and the ministry's notification was even more narrow in terms of what it was designed to achieve. But limited though these gains were, these were a result of the Western Ghats movement. They didn't come because the government wanted to protect the Western Ghats. And they didn't come because the Kerala government was, particularly environmentally conscious, though they keep talking about it all the time. But because of the Western Ghats movement, which took place in 1987, then the interaction with Jairam Ramesh in Kotagiri when he came for the Western Ghats meeting, then the setup of the panel, then the pursuit of the panel before the NGT. We didn't leave the report as it was. We pursued the panel report before the NGT, and we asked the NGT not to allow any projects which were banned in the Gadgil committee. But the NGT, of course, pursued its own course, and then that led to the notification of 13/11/2013, where a series of directions were issued about what could be done in the ESAs of the Western Ghats, particularly in all the villages that were identified by Kasturirangan. So in all these things, you can see that there is a continuous pattern. Now, we were not able to go beyond Kasturirangan, so we went back to the Supreme Court with a petition saying that if you compare the Gadgil report and the Kasturirangan report, the Gadgil report is in the category of A-class reports. Kasturirangan is in the category of B-class reports. It's because it's not even headed by an ecologist or anybody. And the Gadgil panel report was done by all the people who were part of the panel, were all living in the Western Ghats, including Gadgil himself. So we said that why do you want to take a second-class report when you want to protect A-class ecology? You use the A-class report. And that's been the peg on which we have gone to the Supreme Court, saying that this country in Western Ghats requires the best thinking. It doesn't require second-class thinking or third-class thinking, which is what the Kerala government did by setting the Omen committee report and all. Everyone is a degeneration of the earlier one. We said that this is what we have to aim for, and this we are trying to persuade. Of course, the matter has not come up in the Supreme Court because of COVID, but we're trying to persuade them that if you want to protect what you yourself recognize are is one of the most unique hotspots, biodiversity hotspots in the world, then you go to the best of thinking. You don't go to secondary thinking or tertiary thinking. You go to the best of what, and the Gadgil panel report was best in terms of not just what it had discovered, but also in terms of its recommendations. So part of the reason why I wanted to talk to this group was that people generally get very depressed and negative when they see what is happening in the Western Ghats today, and no doubt the destruction is enormous. We don't seem to recognize that these areas don't belong to us. We belong to them. We give the example, for example, in the ocean, many people think that the 500-meter zone under the coastal regulation belongs to the people who reside on the land, and they have a right to put up some hotel or some construction or whatever it is, but that is untrue. The 500 meters is a play out of the ocean. It is actually ocean space. It every time the ocean recedes, but it's a space which is actually part of the ocean. It's not part of human beings. So the same thing that Viju talks about when he talks about the rivers is the same thing. When you open the floodgates, the river is going to establish itself because this is the property of the river. The river has its own identity. And we can't give up that identity. We must recognize that identity, and we should, and I think much of our thinking, and even Gadgil's thinking was about this, that if you think that everything belongs to you, then you're going to have the status that you're facing today. Because then it'll always be whether this is part of the cultural sphere, whether this is part of the natural sphere, whether it's part of this sphere or that sphere. Ultimately, you got to recognize that the Western Ghats is not yours. Only those people who recognize it, that is most of the tribal communities, they recognize that it was not theirs either. And therefore they looked after it. Now, if you feel that it is yours, then any human being will have his own ideas and dreams about what he wants to do there. And obviously it's going to go for a toss because our wisdom is very limited and very small scale compared to the wisdom of millions of years that have gone into the evolution of the Western Ghats. We can't match that wisdom. We can't match that natural wisdom. We can't figure out why certain things evolved in certain ways, why certain ecosystems in the Western Ghats evolved that, why the Kaveri River has got its origins here and some other river has got its origins there. We have no idea. Absolutely no idea. Our education system just doesn't prepare us for this. And so that's one of the things that we've got to get people, particularly the youngsters, to recognize, but it's becoming a very difficult thing nowadays. Because they think that, today it's not a question of who owns the mobile phone. I think that most of the youngsters are owned by the mobile phone. They don't own mobile phones anymore. They are owned by mobile phones and by cell phones. So it's very difficult sometimes to even to get their attention. But this is what bothers me most, and why it's important. Even I came also because of Meera's request, because Meera is an outstanding person who is actually involved. Though she lives in these dirty places like Bangalore and sometimes visits some other, but she is there in Wayanad, and she is actually getting Adivasi people to restore the forest. That's number one activity as far as I am concerned. That is only, that is the type of people whom you give Bharat Ratnas and so on, because this is the activity. It cannot be done by living in Bangalore. It has to, it comes as a natural consequence of living there and doing something there.
Claude, you just have a minute.
Even if you do it part-time also, there's no problem, but you do it even 10%, but you do it of your time. But if you don't do that at all, and you only live in Bangalore or any of these other places, or Panji or whatever it is, and give sermons, nobody is going to listen to you at all. And certainly nature is not going to listen to you at all, because you have no interaction with her at all. So I would really, as a parting shot, and advise to most of my younger friends, is just forget about your college and your university and just go and see the beauty of the Western Ghats. I'm a Kokni. I consider myself a Kokni because I eat fish curry rice, I speak Konkani and so on, and I'm part of it. I mean, if you tell me that I'm a Orissa person or a Bengali person, I'm not. I am a Kokni. So you can see that beauty, and you can see beauty as it goes on over the months. And unless you do that, and unless you come there, then this conversation will not be productive at all in any sense of the term. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claude. Thanks for that insight into the various movements that has happened, the people movement and across the Western Ghats, and how it has led to the litigation and what we now have in hand to use the law as a tool to basically conserve what is remaining. Saleela, I'm sorry that to wait. Actually, Mr. BK Singh, he's a retired PCCF, and he needs to leave, so he has requested a couple of minutes. Sir,
go ahead.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Meera, and sorry, Saleela. It was Saleela's turn, and I will just take a minute or two. An opportunity hearing Mr. Viju and Dr. Claude, both of them brought so very well. Both of them described their respective areas, Kerala and Goa, quite nicely, and how we have destroyed Western Ghats. Because it is not, as far as Kerala is concerned, the opposition's charge that the gates were opened late, that is not important. What is important is we have changed the landscape. We have changed the land use and destroyed natural forests all over. And similarly, the Goa story is same, because how long can you go on plundering the nature? How long you go on? There has to be a stop somewhere. So Indian Institute of Science has said categorically in several papers that in about 30-40 years of time, they have studied the satellite imageries. We have lost nearly 30% vegetation from Western Ghat areas. That should be quite alarming, and that because we have been losing forest, several projects. Dr. Claude knows I'm closely watching what is happening in Goa, and several the roads, the 2-lane roads to be now widened to 4 lanes, railway line to be doubled, double track to be done. Similarly in Karnataka also, Hubli Ankola, they want to open it for another rail line. So if in the name of development, and most of these projects are contractors driven. Most of these projects, please believe me, because I have seen the functioning of the government from even this side of the table. Now I'm on the other side of the table after retirement. But most of these projects are contractors driven. And everyone is with that. It is basically the nexus between bureaucrats and politicians to destroy the nature. And we saw in Glasgow recently, I'm closing it. I'm sorry for Saleela, because I have interviewed. I'm closing, just flagging few more issues and closing. We saw in Glasgow that 90% of the countries who own natural forests, they have pledged that they will end deforestation by 2030. We have not pledged that. Even if we pledge that we will end deforestation, we are not too sure whether we will comply with our pledge. But then we have not been able to pledge that we should be able to stop deforestation by 30%. You saw in Arunachal Pradesh, Debang Valley, the most important valley. You must have seen in the, I think, Indian Express or somewhere yesterday or today. I saw about 2.7 lakh trees has to go, and it is for a hydel project. It's a wonderful forest. This is the best forest, and if you destroy, already we have flooding in Brahmaputra. Even in the month of May, Assam faced. I know we are in Western Ghat area, but yet I am talking of Brahmaputra flooding, and we still want to destroy the catchment of the river. So that is it, and I am very happy to join this group. And anytime, maybe next time I will speak more elaborately. I'll be more prepared. And I am also writing a book for the information of Viju, and the name of the book is The Changing Land Uses, Shrinking Carbon Sinks, and Shrinking Streams. This is the name of the book. The book will come out, I think, more or less final. It will come out in about a month's time or so. Thank you very much. And sorry, Saleela, again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for connecting to the global issues as well. And thank you, sir, for joining us. Happy to listen to you. Saleela, I'll just introduce Saleela. Saleela Patkar is an engineer turned organic farmer. She also has a degree from the London School of Economics. She's based in Madikeri, Kodagu, with experience working in institutions like Myrada, and has extensive work experience traveling across the length and breadth of the country. She's worked on developmental challenges in some of the remotest villages. She has worked with landslide affected villages in Mukodlu and Monangiri villages in Kodagu during the 2018 and 2019 disasters. Over to you, Saleela.
Thank you so much, Meera. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, Saleela.
Yeah, okay. So So, I think a lot of things at the macro level has already been said by the previous speakers. So thanks for doing that, because I didn't know where to start actually. So let me go more into my personal experience with this landslide thing. On the 14th of August in 2018, I had told my mother not to travel to Mysore because the rain was very strange. It was terribly strange. And I said, what is your business taking a bus to Mysore? But she really wanted to be with her granddaughter that day. So by the time she returned on the 16th, through 2 feet of water, all roads were blocked. So the world had completely changed in a matter of 48 hours, really. So this is what I'm talking about. 2018 was a phenomenon that most people in Kodagu had not witnessed in living memory. There was just some news that an old lady, very old lady, had heard of some mountain coming down or something. Most probably that was 1924. And there were smaller versions of this in 1961. So 2018 was really scarring. And the problem was it was full of mist during the landslides that we actually didn't know what had happened until the mist lifted away after 2 or 3 days, starting, I think, August 14th. So though I was personally not terribly affected or at all, in fact, compared to what others went. So I started working in a relief center from the 19th of August. So my discussion started from there. Many of the evacuees, I think, had just been pulled out of their villages, but not all had lost everything. It's only when they went back from the relief center they realized some of them hadn't lost much, but the others had. And after I got into I got a little assignment actually. It was a project funded by Plan India and implemented by MyCaps, which is based in Mysore, to support school children affected by landslides, which was, in a way, a typical initial disaster response of give blankets. And, we could have blanketed all of Kodagu with the blankets that came to Kodagu in the relief materials. So we really had a flood of relief materials to deal with. So what we were able to do was sort of change the project a little bit from merely giving certain kinds of materials to look at, how people can reclaim, let's say, lost water line. They didn't have drinking water when they went back to the village and such things. So this project helped me actually go to various villages and meet people and actually see their land. It was a lot more in depth than I would have imagined if I didn't have an assignment. So, so once this project got done, we started to discuss, and I think Meera and I were constantly on the phone at that time, wondering what can be done. And since in my previous work I was mostly involved in training, one of the things I thought of was that we didn't have material in Kannada to understand what can be done when your village is affected by a landslide. So I'm really talking micro issues now, because I think finally the people and the micro ecosystem and that landscape also has to be managed once there is a landslide. And I must have read a lot of geology at that time, something that I probably didn't expect to do. So in the end, we did meet up with some interesting people. One was a retired, director or technical director from GSI, Sri Chinnaswamy Dhanavelu. He is based in Chennai, and he's one of the few people who looks at landslides in the Western Ghats. So he said when he was working in GSI, most people in the government thought landslides equals the Himalayan belt, not the Western Ghats. And he said, I tried very hard to sort of lobby with them to get them to put some attention on the Western Ghats, and he cut his teeth, I think, handling the the landslide in Kunur or Uti, I don't know, where an entire bus I got washed away or something. That was in the 90s or something like that. I don't remember the dates very much. So just traveling with him and watching the landscape actually gave me quite a bit of understanding of what had happened. And so when you look at the GSI report, which happened soon after the landslides, there's a report which is online. You can download it from the GSI's website. About 105 landslides had been studied there, and quite often they were able to recognize that a strangely made road or these slope cuts were probably responsible for some of the damage. But I can't say very much because I'm not a geologist. So really, that's not something I would sort of hazard at the moment. And during his discussions, we also met with people who work. I'm going straight into the solution bit a little bit and what has happened post landslides. Sorry, I'm suddenly forgetting his name, but he works on vetiver for slope stabilization. He was with the Tata T, I think. So we got introduced to the use of vetiver for slope stabilization. And to our luck, we had Professor Chandan Ghosh, who is with IIT Jammu, and who was part of the National Disaster Management. I think there's an institute or an authority in Delhi. So he's part of that. So he came by to Madikeri, and we actually did a demo. We did a little bit of a training, a bit of understanding of how you can do slope stabilization with low cost. Now, I think we just heard in the previous, the previous speakers talk about how even slope stabilization is very, contractor driven, because you would love to spend a lot of money on, large investments, building huge Chinese, the Great Wall of China around every slope that collapses, but not really look at the causal factors or look at low cost solutions also for farmers, because there are many of us get affected, and now we know that landslides are almost an annual affair. They're really an annual affair, so we really need to learn to cope with it, even if it is small slopes on a farm, something behind your home, a small slope that is sliding behind your home or anything like that, please repair. So that slope, I must tell you, has stood the test of the last 3 monsoons. So I'm very happy to say that. I have some photos. I'm not sure if we can project some of them at some point, maybe during the Q&A. So one house, Professor Ghosh said, I need a house and then I need a slope. It needs to be a slope with some stakes in it to, for us to plant vetiver or something and try to stabilize. So we found a friend's house which had a terrible slope below it, and then quite a few people came and learned how to use vetiver, etc. Unfortunately, our speed in terms of this whole slope stabilization got cut by COVID pandemic. So personally, I've not been able to work on it for the last 2 years. I would love to restart some of the work with friends, and I'm just happy that we are actually having a little chat today, through which probably I'm sort of motivated to get started. So let me just say what could be some things we can work at. This is at the micro level. I'm not talking about large policies, but some usable solutions at the lower level, because whether a macro level thing happens or not, we are still vulnerable to land just slipping away beneath our feet. And so here are some things. Usable materials for early warning. In Kodagu, I realize people have learned from the experience to a large extent, and they've saved themselves every time they knew there was some high risk zone that they were living in. So with every subsequent rainy season, we found that many people sort of evacuated themselves from their habitations and saved themselves. So some amount of that early warning and knowledge. So the thing is, we experienced it in Kodagu, and Meera and I were discussing how we can share the the people's understanding of what are the signs when a landslide happens, so you can you can evacuate or whatever, because other areas of the Western Ghats hadn't faced it in 2018. And then you realize that with every passing year, the area which got affected has been both north and south. The KVK will send us, rain information, which is only readable by a very technically trained person. is in Kannada, but it's still not usable. So can we have a traffic light kind of system much faster? Because these things are very localized. You find that it rained heavily in one place but not in another. So what can we do about that? More these.
Saleela, you have
Especially
2
rain data.
minutes.
Yes. Usable landside hazard mapping. We know it exists somewhere, but it does not reach to every panchayat where they know this is an area which is hazardous, and then there are certain activities we should not. A very important thing I found was is to discuss how we can actually do some training for our JCP, our earth moving equipment operators, because it's not just the large projects. Everybody uses a JCB or a Hitachi to do little things, which causes trouble. We know from data from Nepal, for instance, that a lot of the landslides were being caused by these village roads, which are, I think, villagers just dig into the mountains and make roads, and then you have more and more landslides. So that was one thing, and I realized the number of JCBs that are roaming around could be causing one of that. So those are some of the things. And what was pending from, we actually had some money set aside through a CSR fund, but unfortunately, COVID changed that thing, was to bring in a whole lot of, a multidisciplinary team, a lot of different kinds of experts. There are many of them who want to contribute in this area. So we can just put up some documentation which is more readable, more accessible, and which can be easily translated to all our different languages, the Western Ghats languages, let's say, on how to recognize a landslide, what to do. It's the entire understanding, and then a lot of the do's and don'ts in terms of the smaller things that you can handle. The larger policy issues, the large infrastructure issues, they still remain. But at least as a, I'm thinking as a villager, what can I do to make things a little better for myself and my habitation? And those are some things that I would like to talk about. So probably this is an opportunity that we can have. I used to say, I'll set aside one room in my house for a landslide center, because probably we can have a more formalized, maybe a virtual setup where we can work together on some of the everyday matters of landslides as well. Yeah, I'll leave it at this. Thank you, and sorry I went really on the micro end. Yeah.
Thank you, Saleela. Thanks for that real solutioning side of it, so that we are not leaving with this thought that there are no solutions, it's good to have that on one side litigation as a solution, and on the other side a micro level what I can do in my backyard. Thank you, Saleela, for that.
Just one more point. Sorry. In the last 2 or 3 years, most farmers have done something on their very highly destroyed land. So that is something we need to capture as well. And unfortunately, I've not been able to document it. So there may be lessons as to how people can pick up their lives also. And probably, a quick visit will also help us capture what can be done. So just adding.
Thank you, Saleela. So now the audience can participate, and we are really glad if you can ask questions, and or even share if there are any affected people who are affected by landslides. Please share your experience, and we would want to record that. There is 15 minutes for us to share experiences. Please raise your hand, and I think Bharat will be able to unmute you.
Veera, can we ask Nagraj Kuve to speak now?
Yes, please. Yes.
Nagraj, idira? Nagraj?
Hello. Hello.
ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆ.
Hello.
Hello.
Nagraj. Yeah.
Hello.
Am I audible?
Hello. Yeah.
Hello.
Am I audible?
ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆ.
Hello.
ನಾಗರಾಜ್ ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೆ.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Yes, please speak, Nagraj.
I am Nagraj Kuve from Kuve, village of Modigere Taluk, Chikmagalur district. I would like to talk in Kannada.
Okay, no problem.
In 2019 ಏನು ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಆಯ್ತು, ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಮತ್ತೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಕುಟುಂಬದು ಅದರ ಸಂತ್ರಸ್ತರು ಆಗಿದ್ದೀವಿ. ಈಗ 2017-18ರಿಂದ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಈಗ ಕಳೆದ 3-4 ವರ್ಷದಿಂದ ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆಯಿಂದ ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ ಕಡೆಗೆ ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಆಗ್ತಾನೆ ಇದೆ. ಜನ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗ್ತಾನೆ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ದುರಾದೃಷ್ಟ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಯಾರಿಗೂ. ನಮ್ಮ ಕುಟುಂಬಕ್ಕೆ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಸಿಕ್ತು. ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಮನೆಗೆ ಡ್ಯಾಮೇಜ್ ಆಗಿತ್ತು, ನಾವು ಮನೆಯನ್ನ ಕಟ್ಕೊಂಡು ಓಕೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಒಟ್ಟಾರೆ 99% ಜನಕ್ಕೆ ಇವತ್ತಿಗೂ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ. ಪರಿಹಾರ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿರೋರ್ ಸಂಖ್ಯೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಕಡಿಮೆ. ಮೂಡಿಗೆರೆ ತಾಲೂಕಿಂದು ಒಂದು ಮಲೆಮನೆ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಹಳ್ಳಿ ಇದೆ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಹಲಗಡಕ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಹಳ್ಳಿ ಇದೆ, ಆಮೇಲೆ ಮಧುಗುಂಡಿ ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಹಳ್ಳಿ, ಹಾಗೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಚೆನ್ನಡ್ಲು ಅನ್ನೋ ಹಳ್ಳಿ. ಈ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಇಡೀ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳೇ ಹೋಗಿದಾವೆ. ಒಂದು 80-90% ಮನೆಗಳು ಹೋಗಿದ್ದಾವೆ. ಆ ಯಾವ ಜನಗಳಿಗೂ ಇವತ್ತಿಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಏನು ಪುನರ್ವಸತಿ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವರಿಗೆ ಮನೆ ಕಟ್ಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಜಾಗ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ. ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಅವರು ಏನು ಜಮೀನನ್ನ ಕಳ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರು, ಅದಕ್ ಪರ್ಯಾಯ ಜಮೀನ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ, ಇಲ್ಲ ಬೆಳೆ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿಲ್ಲ. ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿರೋರ್ ಸಂಖ್ಯೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಕಡಿಮೆ. ಮತ್ತೆ ದುರಂತ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಅರಣ್ಯ ಒತ್ತುವರಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿರೋರಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಅರಣ್ಯ ನಾಶಕ್ಕೆ ಮುಖ್ಯ ಕಾರಣ ಪ್ಲಾಂಟರ್ಗಳು. ಆದ್ರೆ ಏನು ನಿರಾಶ್ರಿತರು ಅಥವಾ ಸಂತ್ರಸ್ತರಾಗಿದ್ದಾರಲ್ಲ, ಅವರಲ್ಲಿ 99% BPL ಕುಟುಂಬದವರು, ತುಂಬಾ ಕಡು ಬಡವರು ಅಥವಾ ಏನು ಸಣ್ಣ ಹಿಡುವಳಿದಾರರು, ಯಾರಿಗೂ 5 ಎಕರೆಗಿಂತ ಕಡಿಮೆ ಜಾಗ ಇರುವಂತವ್ರು. ಇನ್ನೊಂದ್ ಏನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನವರಿಗೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಕೂಡ ಇಲ್ಲ ಆ ಜಾಗಕ್ಕೆ. ಅವರು ಅವರ ಜೀವನಾಧಾರಕ್ಕಾಗಿ ಮನೆ ಸುತ್ತ ಇರುವ ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಜಾಗವನ್ನ ಕೃಷಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಈಗ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ರೆಕಾರ್ಡ್ ಇಲ್ಲದೆ ಇರೋದ್ರಿಂದ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಪರ್ಯಾಯವಾಗಿ ಜಮೀನ್ ಕೂಡ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಮನೆನೇ ಸಿಗ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ, ಮನೆಗೆ ಜಾಗನೇ ಗುರುತಿಸ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಇನ್ ಜಮೀನು ಎಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಸಿಗ್ಬೇಕು? ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು, ಒಂದ್ ಕಡೆ ಜಾಗ ಗುರುತಿಸಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಕಳಸ ಹತ್ರ ಒಂದು ಕುಂಬ್ಳಡ್ಕೆ ಅಂತ ಒಂದ್ ಜಾಗ. ಆ ಜಾಗ ಹೇಗೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಗುಡ್ಡದ ಮೇಲೆ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಈಗ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಗುಡ್ಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಿದ್ರಿಂದ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಭೂಕುಸಿತ ಆಗಿದೆ, ಮತ್ತೆ ಗುಡ್ಡದ ಮೇಲಿರುವ ಫಾರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕಡ್ದು ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ಜಾಗನ ಐಡೆಂಟಿಫೈ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಈ ರೀತಿ ಅನ್ಸೈಂಟಿಫಿಕ್ ಆಗಿ ಪರಿಹಾರ ಅನ್ನೋ ಕೆಲ್ಸ ಕೂಡ ಅನ್ಸೈಂಟಿಫಿಕ್ ಆಗಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ ಒಂದು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ನಾನು ಗಮನಿಸಿರೋದು ಏನು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ನಮ್ ಭಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಆಗಿರೋ ನಾನು ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳ 4-5 ಹೆಸರು ಹೇಳಿದ್ನಲ್ಲ, ಅಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಅಂತ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಇವತ್ತಿಗೂ ಹೊಸ ರೆಸಾರ್ಟ್ಗಳು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದಾವೆ. ಆ ರೆಸಾರ್ಟ್ಗಳಿಗೆ ಪರ್ಮಿಷನ್ ಹೇಗೆ ಕೊಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಎಲ್ಲಾ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳಲ್ಲೂ ಏನು ಮಲೆಮನೆಯಲ್ಲಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಹಾಗೆ ಮಧುಗುಂಡಿ, ಹಾಗೆ ಒಂದು ದುರ್ಗದ ಹಳ್ಳಿ ಅಂತ ಒಂದ್ ಬರುತ್ತೆ, ಅಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಒಂದೊಂದು ಹೊಸದಾಗಿ ರೆಸಾರ್ಟ್ಗಳು ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದಾವೆ. ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಜನ ಹೊರಗಡೆಯಿಂದ ಬಂದು ಜಮೀನನ್ನ ಖರೀದಿ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಎಲ್ಲಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಫುಲ್ಲು ಗುಡ್ಡದಲ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ನೇನು ಲಾಸ್ಟಿಗೆ ಬಂಡೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಶೋಲಾ ಫಾರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನು ಹುಲ್ಲುಗಾವಲು ಇದೆ, ಅದ್ರ ಕೊನೆಗೆ ಬಂಡೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಬಂಡೆ ಬರುವವರೆಗೂ ಕೂಡ ಬಂಡೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ರೆ ಮಾತ್ರ ಬಿಟ್ರೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿವರೆಗೂ ಜಮೀನನ್ನ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಅರಣ್ಯ ಒತ್ತುವರಿ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಇವತ್ತಿಗೂ ನಡೀತಾನೆ ಇದೆ. ಆದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಏನಾಗಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ಯಾವ ಫಾರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಇನ್ಫಾರ್ಮ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರು ಕೂಡ ಅವರು ಯಾವುದೇ ಕ್ರಮ ತಗೊಳ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಈ ಫಾರೆಸ್ಟ್ ಡಿಪಾರ್ಟ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಹಾಗೆ ಏನು ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿರುವ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಶ್ರೀಮಂತರು 3 ಜನನು ಒಟ್ಟಾಗಿ ಒಂದು ಅಘೋಷಿತವಾಗಿ ಒಪ್ಪಂದ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ. ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಆದ ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ತುಂಬಾ ಇನ್ನೂ ಒತ್ತುವರಿ ಮುಂದುವರಿತಾ ಇದೆ. ಇದು ನಾನು ಯಾವ್ದು ಸುಮ್ನೆ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ. ನಾನು ಆಕ್ಚುಲಿ ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ 2 ವರ್ಷ ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡಿದೀನಿ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ನಮ್ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿಗೆ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿತ್ತು, ಜೊತೆಗೆ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಸುತ್ತ ಯಾವ ಫ್ಯಾಮಿಲಿಗಳಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ಎಫೆಕ್ಟ್ ಆಗಿದಾವೆ, ಮುಖ್ಯವಾಗಿ ಮೂಡಿಗೆರೆ ತಾಲೂಕಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಸ್ಟಡಿ ಮಾಡಿ ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಒಂದು ಬುಕ್ ಕೂಡ ಮಾಡಿದ್ದೆ. ಅದರ ಆಧಾರದ ಮೇಲೆ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು. ಮತ್ತೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದೇನು ಅಂದ್ರೆ, ಅರಣ್ಯ ಇಲಾಖೆಯವರು ಈಗ ಇಂಗುಗುಂಡಿಗಳನ್ನ ತೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇಳಿಜಾರು ಗುಡ್ಡಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಅವರು ನೀರಿಂಗ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿ ಇಂಗು ಗುಂಡಿಯನ್ನ ತೋಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾರು ಈ ರೀತಿ ಐಡಿಯಾ ಅವ್ರಿಗೆ ಕೊಟ್ರು ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಅದು ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಇಂಗು ಗುಂಡಿಯನ್ನ ತೋಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಅವರು, ಆ ಇಂಗು ಗುಂಡಿ ತೋಡಿದ ಜಾಗಗಳ ಅಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲ ಆಲ್ಮೋಸ್ಟ್ ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಆಗಿದೆ. ಇದು ಕೂಡ ತುಂಬಾ ಅವೈಜ್ಞಾನಿಕವಾದ ಒಂದು
ನಾಗರಾಜ್ ಅವರೇ, ಒಂದ್ ನಿಮಿಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಗಿಸೋದಕ್ಕಾಗತ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಮುಗಿತಾ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮಾತು? ಒಂದ್ ನಿಮಿಷದಲ್ಲಿ ಮುಗಿಸ್ತೀರಾ?
ಓಕೆ. ಹಾಗೆ ಇನ್ನೊಂದು ಬೋರ್ವೆಲ್ಗಳು ಕೂಡ ಮಲೆನಾಡಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಯಾರು ಪರ್ಮಿಷನ್ ಕೊಡ್ತಾರೆ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಒಟ್ಟಾರೆ ನಾನು ನೋಡಿರೋದು ಈ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಜನಪ್ರತಿನಿಧಿಗಳಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು, ಯಾರು ಈ ನಿರಾಶ್ರಿತರಿಗಾಗಿರ್ಬೋದು ಅಥವಾ ಸಂತ್ರಸ್ತರಿಗೆ ಗಮನ ಹರಿಸ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಒಟ್ಟಾರೆ ಎಲ್ಲರ ಮೇಲೂ ಈ ಒಂದು ಪರಿಸರ ಸಂರಕ್ಷಣೆ ಬಗ್ಗೆನ ನೆಗೆಟಿವ್ ಕಾನ್ಸೆಪ್ಟ್ ಆಲ್ರೆಡಿ ಇದೆ, ಅದನ್ನ ಇನ್ನೂ ಜಾಸ್ತಿ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ನನ್ನ ಅನಿಸಿಕೆ ಯುವಕರಲ್ಲಿ ಮತ್ತೆ ವಿದ್ಯಾರ್ಥಿಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ಅದ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅವೇರ್ನೆಸ್ ಹೆಚ್ಚು ಮಾಡುವ ಕೆಲಸಗಳನ್ನ ಮಾಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀನಿ. ಅವಕಾಶಕ್ಕೆ ಧನ್ಯವಾದಗಳು. ಥ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ಯು.
Thank you.
Meera, you think we can summarize what Nagraj said in English,
Yes,
so that
yes,
those of us
yes.
who do not speak Kannada can also get the gist of what he said?
Yes, please, Bharat.
Okay. So Nagraj Kuve is from a village in the Western Ghats, which was repeatedly affected with landslides. And he said that his family was fortunate to get some compensation for the affected parties that the government set up. But there are many families which still haven't received any kind of compensation with respect to the lands that they have lost, or even for the houses that were damaged because of the landslides in the Western Ghats area. And according to his observations, it has been largely those small-time farmers and small-time landholders who've lost lands and have not been compensated. And these are the people who were using the lands around their houses to earn livelihoods and to feed themselves. But the observation that has been made is that the biggest encroachers of forest lands in the Western Ghats are the plantation makers or plantation owners. And they have continued to encroach into forest lands, and they only stop when they hit a rock, literally. Otherwise, they have continued to encroach into forest lands. And he contends that even the construction of the Ingugundi, which is basically rainwater harvesting pits, are also being constructed in unscientific ways, which are also giving rise to different degrees of landslides in these areas. So he contends that even the compensations are not being offered in a scientific way, because a new site has been identified in a place called Kalasha, again on top of a hill, which will be cleared to resettle those who have been affected by landslides. And those of them who got affected because of landslides are being relocated to another potential site of landslide. And this again is very contentious for the reason that it is being unscientifically done. And he strongly believes that the unannounced or unlegalized nexus between politicians, bureaucrats, and the rich and the powerful is being very detrimental to the cause of Western Ghats and those people who are the real dependents on the Western Ghats. So that is basically the gist of what Nagraj shared with us today. And thank you, Nagraj, for sharing your observations and your experience with us.
Thank you, Nagraj, and thank you, Bharat, for translating it for us. There is a question from Abhijit from Kolhapur, Maharashtra. Last year, there were many landslides in Satara and Raigad district from Sahyadri mountain. A major incident took more than, I think, 30 casualties. Can we correlate this with highway constructions from Konkan and Pune region or any other reason? Can you shed some light on this? Along with landslides, there are major floods in Kolhapur, Sangli, and Satara district of Western Maharashtra. Is there any interconnection? Any panelists or anyone who could shed light on this?
Is there a landslide technical expert around? But I think this is a perfect storm for us, and I just want to say that now in Coorg, wherever we look, we are able to identify old landslides, okay? When you look at the landscape, we know at some point, maybe 5,000 years ago, maybe 10,000 years ago, or maybe 300 years ago, something happened in that area. And in the Western Ghats, the one good thing or the bad thing is that vegetation grows over even a highly scarred landscape within a few years. So I remember, Mr. Danavelu of GSI telling me, "Madam, don't worry, Western Ghats in 3 years there will be plants growing on your landslide, so it won't look so scarred." But the same thing is that in 100 years, the landslide gets covered up, and you'll end up building in the same area, even though it's a high risk thing. So our problem is that we have a landscape which has been the shape of the Western Ghats are really a landslide and eroding, process, right? And now we have this bad rainfall pattern, along with our own digging and all kinds of playing around with our landscape. So I think all these three things have come together, and it is causing havoc. So I really think we should now, on the regional level, really discuss what can be done about it and how we go about that. And just responding to what Nagaraj has gone through, I realize that it is the most vulnerable people who end up getting this highly vulnerable landscapes to farm on and to live, and therefore they also don't have pattas, and they do not get compensation and such things. So yeah.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Saleela,
Martha.
for responding. Any other questions?
Can I,
Yeah.
no, can
Yes,
I
Sula.
add?
Yes,
Hello?
please. Sula.
Am I audible?
Yes, Ullas, please.
Yeah, see what Saleela was saying, she was just quoting one incident that happened. That was on the night of 11th of November 1993, and not just one bus. There was some 100 vehicles which were lost, and we lost 3 hairpin bends towards Kunur. I was on the bus behind that on that night. So, see, and in Nilgiris, we have seen different kinds of landslide. Like she said, we can't define landslide because Western Ghats is not a mountain like any other mountain, because it is formed by these Charnokite hills, which are loosely connected, and what holds them is the Shola grasslands till most of Nilgiri NBR, and towards the north they have different kinds of ecosystem, but mostly if you go up the hill, it is only grass which holds on to this Charnokite mountains. So if you remove the grass, I have seen that we have landslide. Well, the first of the landslide which I saw is in 1978, and that was a biggest flood when I was very young. Then I saw what was this 1993 landslide. That was exactly because of the human greed, the Bariga population, which went ahead for planting tea. We are not supposed to plant tea in gradients above 32 degrees. But when the Russians were buying a lot of tea, all the people started cultivating tea at the cost of grasslands, and they planted grass on I mean, they planted tea on every kind of slopes, and that was the result of the 1993 landslide. So other than that, if you look at like she told, some landslide would have happened long years ago. That one example is Avalanche. Of course, Avalanche now has become Avalanche Shola. So we don't know what happened then. The place itself got the name because of a huge landslide that happened billions of years ago, I think, so millions of years ago. And the landslide cannot be defined. Like somebody asked about the road projects which are bringing down in Satara and all. I've been to Satara, but you can see the weight of a heavy vehicle, which can cause enough of resonance on the mountains. Because I told no, it is very loosely connected mountains. So if you put lot of pressure in the form of dams, in the form of highway projects, and you remove all the ecology, especially trees and all, automatically there will be landslide. And in Kerala, like what you saw, they're blasting the mountains. Every day they are blasting the mountains. So automatically, when rain comes, a normal rain, a pre-monsoon shower is enough to bring down all these mountains. And today we have in the era of climate change, we actually have high intense rainfall, and this high intense rainfall can easily bring down all these small hillocks and big rocks down. So I think that's some of the things which I have wanted to share, and might be add later. If anybody has doubts, they can ask me.
Thank you, Ullas. Thank you for bringing the conversation on grasslands and tea. And I think that was a very important point coming
Meera,
from. Yeah.
Meera, there are people from Uttar Kannada district also here.
So please ask them to come on. I mean, I think we'll just have 3 more minutes if there is someone who can share.
Ganesh ಇದೀರಾ ಇಲ್ಲಿ?
ಇದ್ದೇನೆ.
ಗಣೇಶ್, ಅದೇ ನಿಮ್ದು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಇತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಈ ಸರಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಲ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಎಲ್ಲ ಆಗಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಉತ್ತರ ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ?
ಹೌದು.
ಹೋದ್ ಮಳೆಗಾಲದಲ್ಲಿ.
ಹೌದು.
ನಿಮ್ದೇನಾದ್ರು ಅದೇ ನಿಮ್ದು ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೀರಿಯನ್ಸ್ ಹೇಳಿ. ಅಲ್ಲಿ ನೀವು ವಿಡಿಯೋ ಎಲ್ಲ ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ರಿ.
ಓಕೆ. ನಾವು ಬಂದು ವೆಸ್ಟರ್ನ್ ಘಾಟ್ ಹತ್ರ ಇರೋದು. ಈ ಮಳೆಗಾಲ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಕಳೆದ ಕೆಲವು ವರ್ಷಗಳಿಂದ ತುಂಬಾ ಅದರ ಮಳೆಯ ಪ್ರಮಾಣ ಆಗಂತ ವಾರ್ಷಿಕವಾಗಿ ಬಹಳ ವ್ಯತ್ಯಾಸ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಆದ್ರೆ ಅತಿಯಾದ ಮಳೆ, ಕೆಲವೇ ತಾಸುಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ತುಂಬಾ ಮಳೆ ಹೊಯ್ಯೋದು, ಆ ತರ ಆಗಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಈ ಅರ್ಬೈಲ್ ಘಾಟ್ ಸಮೀಪದ ಹಲವು ಗುಡ್ಡಗಳು ಕುಸಿತಾಗಿ ಹಳ್ಳಿಗಳೇ ನಾಶ ಆಗೋದ್ವು. ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಕಾರಣ ಏನು ಅಂತ ಒಂದು ಸಲ ಎಲ್ಲ ತುಂಬಾ ತಜ್ಞರು ಅವರು ಭೇಟಿ ನೀಡಿ ಏನೇನು ಆದ್ರು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸರಿಯಾದ ಸೂಕ್ತವಾದ ಯಾವುದೇ ವೈಜ್ಞಾನಿಕ ಮಾನದಂಡಗಳೇನು ಹೊರಗಡೆ ಬರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ನನಗೆ ವೈಯಕ್ತಿಕವಾಗಿ ಅನ್ಸೋದು, ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಈಗ ನಡೀತಾ ಇರುವಂತಹ ದೇವಿ ಮನೆ ಘಾಟ್, ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಹೊಸದಾಗಿ ರಸ್ತೆ ಮಾಡಿ ಕಂಡಲ್ಲಿ ಮಣ್ಣನ್ನ ಅಗಿಯೋದು, ಮರಗಳನ್ನ ಕಡಿಯೋದು, ಇಲ್ಲಿನ ಸೂಕ್ಷ್ಮ ಜೀವಿಗಳನ್ನ ನಾಶ ಮಾಡೋದು, ಎಷ್ಟರ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಕನಿಷ್ಠ ಪಕ್ಷ ಅವು ನಾಶ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇರೋದನ್ನ ಹೇಗೆ ತಡಿಬಹುದು ಅಂತ ಯೋಚಿಸೋರು ಕೂಡ ಇಲ್ಲ. ಅಷ್ಟರ ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ. ಮಳೆ ತುಂಬಾ ಮಳೆ ಬೀಳುವ ಪ್ರಮಾಣ ಏನಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ ಅದರಲ್ಲಿ ವ್ಯತ್ಯಾಸ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಏನು ನಮ್ಮಲ್ಲಿ ಜೂನ್ ನಿಂದ ಕೆಲವು ಸಲ ಸೆಪ್ಟೆಂಬರ್ ಅಕ್ಟೋಬರ್ ವರೆಗೂ ಮಳೆ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇತ್ತು. 200ರಿಂದ 225 250 ಇಂಚಿನವರೆಗೂ ಮಳೆ ಆಗಿದ್ದಿತ್ತು. ಅಂತ ಮಳೆ ಆದಾಗ ಸಹ ಈ ರೀತಿಯ ನೆರೆ ಅಂತ ನಾವೇನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೇವಲ್ಲ, ಆ ತರದ ಆ ಪ್ರಮಾಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಘಟ್ಟದ ಭಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಎಂದೂ ಆಗ್ತಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಇತ್ತೀಚಿನ ವರ್ಷಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ನೋಡಿದಾಗ ಈ ಘಟ್ಟದ ಭಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ರೀತಿಯ ನೆರೆ ಉಂಟಾಗ್ತಿರೋದು ತುಂಬಾ ಖೇದಕರ. ಮತ್ತೆ ಇದು ಹೇಗಾಗ್ತಾ ಇದೆ, ಕಾರಣ ಏನು, ಇದಕ್ಕೆ ಪರಿಸರದ ಯಾವುದೇ ಅಸಮತೋಲನ ಕಾರಣನ ಅನ್ನೋದು ನಮ್ಮ ಒಂದು ನೋವು.
Thank you, Ganesh. Bharat, would you like to just quickly translate?
Yes. So Ganesh again comes from one of the villages which got affected with landslides, and
in Uttar Kannada district.
In Uttar Kannada district. So basically, in Western Ghats, Karnataka part of Western Ghats, there is Uttar Kannada and Dakshin Kannada, which are at the core, the central part of the Western Ghats. So he comes from the Uttar Kannada part of the Western Ghats, and in place where he comes from, a lot of hillocks have been lost because of the landslides, and he says that although the volume of rain received during the monsoons have been pretty much the same, but the intensities of it have changed. That in just a couple of hours, a lot of rain comes down, and that there is not enough ecology to work around with as much rain coming down in such a short time period. And he actually is talking about the same issues that is happening around the Devi Mane Ghat as well, wherein Devi Mane Ghat is, if not the first, the second highest rainfall receiving region, where there's a lot of unscientific infrastructure projects being commissioned, which also is a cause of concern, because not just the project that are being developed in an unscientific way, but there are not enough people even thinking about what these problems can give rise to, and what we can do to prevent any kind of such damages getting into the excesses. And that's what, in a gist, Ganesh had to share with us here today.
Thank you, Bharat. Thanks for the translation. I would now request, panelists to respond. Either Viju, Dr. Claude, Saleela, if you have any responses, please. Let's make use of the next 5 minutes for that. Viju?
Yeah, that would be Viju. Okay, let me start before anyone else. See, I think this meeting has been wonderful because it got people from Maharashtra right down to Kerala, and it has included Tamil Nadu as well. So I think this is a great start, and then we should now build up on this, on this network that we have just sort of put together, and we're all face to face for the first time in some ways, right? So that is, I think, a very good issue. Second, I was really, I was just about to say that the good thing in the Kodagu landslide story was that most people have got their new houses, and they did get some compensation either through the government, and also there was an outpouring of support, monetary, in materials, and in many ways from the locals who are, from all over. It's from all over, and especially from people who are not in the district anymore, but belong to the district, who are now maybe in Bangalore, maybe abroad. Really an outpouring of support, so which really helped people get up on their feet and move on within a year, literally. So most people have apparently got their houses in Kodagu. A few haven't, though I'm not sure about the flood affected people of 2019, because they didn't have pattas. Many of them didn't have pattas. Therefore, I feel a little sad that probably the kind of media attention was also not there for all the subsequent landslides that happened in Uttar Kannada. I don't remember Uttar Kannada. I remember at least the Mudugere version, but I don't remember what happened in Uttar Kannada. We do hear of Maharashtra because the death toll was very high, unfortunately, and Kerala was obviously does get some media attention. So I think that we failed in that we've not brought in adequate, attention to it in terms of the numbers and in terms of who was suffering, and the fact that they've not got their compensation or support. So that's something that we need to, I think, bother about. So until we all gang up together, we always say, Kodagu, we were the opening batsmen or whatever. But 2017, it happened in Sri Lanka. Remember, it is the Western Ghats across the sea. So it happened there. And we've learned a little bit from that, actually. They have a lot of interesting manuals that we can all refer to and see what can be done, at least at the micro level, and probably also what was done at the national level in that country. So these are a couple of things I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Saleela.
Meera, let us give Nagesh Hegde sir is here, who writes extensively for Prajavani, hello?
Yes, Sadev. We were,
sir,
yes, yeah.
Sir. Meera, can I speak? This is Nagesh Hegde.
Yes. Maybe a minute, and then we'll go back to the others.
Yeah, it will be less than a minute. I think the whole discussion is anthropocentric. ಮನುಷ್ಯ ಕೇಂದ್ರಿತವಾಗಿ ಎಲ್ಲ ನಡೀತಾ ಇದೆ. ಕಾರಣ ಮನುಷ್ಯನೇ ಆದರೆ nature is trying to reposition itself because of the attack that we have been conducting on the Western Ghats. Just as Saleela told, yes, there have been landslides 2,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, 2 lakh years ago. It is a very unstable place. And that is where we have gone there and settled it. And we have been doing all kinds of irresponsible things there. Now, whatever is happening is for the good of the nature. We should quit the place, isn't it? We should prepare ourselves for the eventual disaster that could happen if we stay there. Isn't it good for the nature that if we quit the place? That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that insightful comment on Western Ghats. Claude, would you have anything to say? Mute. Claude, you're on mute.
I just want to add to what my good friend Nagesh has said about the Western Ghats becoming a no-go area of people quitting from there. Well, just watch out, because on the coast now, we are having the phenomenon of sea level rise. And within 20 years, this is official government data put out on the government website. 20% of the most densely populated areas of Goa are going to go underwater, because 18,000 hectares are already low-lying areas, kazans, which have been carved out from nature. They are going to be reclaimed by the sea. Now, one of the natural consequences of that is people are going to migrate into the Western Ghats, because that's the only place where you are safe from the water coming in from the ocean. So we are going to have a very critical situation, because more people are going to go into the Western Ghats rather than desert it, because that's going to be safe. And yet we know that by going there, they are going to really make it even more unsafe. I think some of these things should, we are not doomsday specialists, but some of these things should be made better known, because these are not what we are saying. As I said, the news about Goa going down under Goa, we got a website now called Goa Drowning, basically to show people what's going to happen to Goa in just 20 years, according to data supplied by the government itself. And for real estate and for whatever purposes people have. So it's a real serious situation. I'm glad that I have got another 5 or 6 years, or even tomorrow before I go, and don't have to face this bloody mess which we have created for ourselves. But on the other hand, thank you, Meera, for holding this meeting, because one of the things that the Western Ghat movement taught us is that you can't have a localized view of the Western Ghats. And your effort to again get this discussion going at the Kannada level, at the Tamil level, Kerala level, and all across the Western Ghat level, that's much appreciated, because once we have it's a whole ecosystem, and we need to look at it also in that holistic fashion. And I'm quite sure that discussions that you're having will make it all possible.
Thank you, Claude. Thank you for that. Viju? Viju, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Just to add to what Claude was saying.
Yes,
I'd been
Viju.
I'd been to North Goa and places like Shirgaon and Pilgaon. And if anyone says that sustainable mining is possible, they should go to these places. Because in Kerala, what's happening right now is they're saying quarrying is okay, quarrying is fine. Nothing will happen. You can have super quarries. That's a kind of idea we are having. So I'll tell these politicians in Kerala, just go to North Goa, just go to Bicholim and see what has happened there. In village after village, there is no water, there is no groundwater resources left. I mean, we should keep these areas like for example, like Chernobyl disaster location. People should go and watch and see what is happening in Goa. I mean, that's so important. I mean, the people in Kerala, they don't realize the kind of frenzied development. Now we are having this K-Rail thing coming in Kerala, the Silver Line project, which is like from one end of from North Kerala to South Kerala, from Kasaragod to Trivandrum, we can reach in 4 hours. And it's going to be really, really bad. I mean, 10,000 buildings are going to get demolished. All your wetlands are going to get wiped off. I mean, the Pinarayi government is pushing for this project. I mean, Greens are up in arms, but I think he's pushing for it. I mean, they call him as the dhoti-clad Modi. To give, I mean, that's a kind of things that are happening in Kerala. And sadly, at the intellectual level, at the social level, at the cultural level, none of these things are getting discussed. Claude, that's the most terrific, most horrifying part I mean, Kerala, which used to have this Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad involvement, Kerala, which used to have people like M.K. Prasad, Kerala, which used to have people like Sugata Kumari, for instance. We don't have that kind of stalwarts, that kind of green leaders in Kerala to sort of push this. I mean, it's actually very horrifying for me. And as you were saying, like, we might have the first climate refugees coming in the country from places like Kuttanad region, which is part of this Vembanad Lake. Already saltwater intrusion is happening. So I mean, Vembanad Lake, as you know, is the second largest ecosystem after Sundarbans. Huge ecosystem, huge marshland, huge wetlands. It's all going. Water is coming inside, and people are moving from Upper Kuttanad to from places like Kainagiri to up to the Ghats. It's happening in Kerala. There is an island called Kumbalangi in where I stay from close in Kochi. The island is sinking because of saltwater intrusion and because of rising sea level. These are serious problems. In fact, Shankamukam beach in Trivandrum, it's completely gone because of Vilnius projects. I mean, so many things are happening in Kerala right now. Claude, it's actually horrifying. And in March we had immense amount of rainfall. I mean, March being summer month, March April we had excess 100% extra rainfall. And places like Kochi got marooned. I mean, the monsoon is yet to start, and the Kochi got waterlogged. I'm sure that we are going to face a major problem in terms of landslides and in terms of flooding, sadly in Karnataka. Saleela was talking about how media, there is no attention by media. I mean, you have disaster reporting. I'm part of media. I'm guilty to that. You have disaster reporting in media. When there's a disaster happening, people go and report. But after that, what is happening there? Like what Meera was saying, where is the rehabilitation happening? Where is the developmental model which needs to be projected? That's not happening. I mean, that is really scary. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Viju, for that. And I see that Ullas has raised his hand, but I'm sorry, Ullas. I think we will have to conclude. But the good thing is that this is just the beginning of this conversation. And for the next 3 weeks, what we are hoping to do is next week we are planning to have the Karnataka discussions in Kannada. The week after that is Tamil Nadu discussions in Tamil. And the third week is Kerala discussions in Malayalam. So hoping to take this, and we are also looking forward to more discussions going forward. I'm sure there will be more people joining us and joining hands with this online movement. Sadly, we have to do this online because we are all spatially located, and hopefully reduce some carbon footprint.
Meera, one word.
Yeah.
Meera.
Yes.
Hello.
Plus. Yeah.
Yeah. What Claude is expecting is it'll be this 20 years down the line, and he will escape before that. We are not going to leave Claude, and he is going to see the climate change, the sea level rise. According to me, by 2030 itself, half of Kerala will go, because Kerala is, from Kochi, like what Viju was saying. You're seeing the landslides in, the sea level rise in Vembanad and Kumblagi. If you look at from Kochi to Kanyakumari, the mean sea level is below -5 MSL sea level, and the sea level is rising already above 1 meters, because there is no water in Arctic. And there was discussion in COP meetings from Copenhagen. I think it has not been quoted, and we were talking about the 3 to 4 crore Kerala people as the climate change refugees, and they might be placed in places where the land mass will be formed, especially Antarctica or Greenland. And so we can see new Kerala, new Goa, and some other country. The whole debate of nationalism itself will be broken into pieces. So I'm saying, Claude, you will live long and we might join in another country. So that's what. I'm taking it a lighter way, but it's very serious. And I have been seeing so many beaches disappearing. In Virginium, for example, when we were fighting against the project, still the fight is on. I had already told that a lot of beaches will disappear. And the local youngsters were in a fight with me. They told they want job. Now they are going to see that they won't have their houses even. So, okay, I'll add on in the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Las. So I think, to just summarize, we spoke about problems, but we are happy that, there are potential solutions that one can probably look forward to on the litigations front that Goa Foundation has been doing. And I think that definitely needs to, take it to a larger level in terms of, the overall movement, I say, and many landmark cases that are there. And if regional specific, if there are groups who would want to take it up, and I think, that is one way to probably go forward. The other is the conversations around whether Western Ghats will move, the disasters are only on the Western Ghats, or Western Ghats is just the trigger of the disaster, and how we just have this small strip of land wherever you say, irrespective of the state, between the Ghats and the coast, and equally people are vulnerable in both these front. And I think that is one key takeaway that we have. Whether we talk for nature or against nature, ultimately, we are all part of nature. So anthropocentric views alone are not going to take us anywhere. And I think, it is important that we know what the landscape that we are living in. And Saleela definitely had a lot of thought process on what can one do in my backyard. And I hope there will be more conversations around that, and we'll be able to bring in more experts who can help us understand how we can take some of these things forward on a more large scale, and see how we can have more people join in those smaller things that you can still do in your backyard. Thank you all. Thanks for being part of this, and we hope to see you again in the upcoming sessions the next few weeks. Thank you once again.
Thank you.